Hello guys, it's Glurmit here, and today we're going to be covering teams that you should be investing in, or at least using in 3v3 Grand Arena to see some success. Now, for a change, we're going to use Facecam today. We're also going to be, this is going to be quite a long one, so please bear with me. So I've kind of broken it down into different sections here. We've got a section for Galactic Legends and a section for non-Galactic Legends here. Now there are more teams, and we're still going to cover more teams than are on the list. But the list is just there to give you guys an idea of what you can use. So the first thing I've done is I've broken down a team that I think a lot of people are going to have, and that is CLS. A lot of people have CLS at Relics, or at least Gear 12 and higher, and depending on the GP bracket you're in, or sorry, should I say Grand Arena bracket you're in, it's going to be a good team regardless. So the first and most common team is Commander Luke, 3PO and Chewie, C3PO. Next, this is where things get a bit difficult because you're not really going to split up these three here, but you may split up the others. So, for example, you could go Sana if you have her farmed, Chewie and Han. This also uses her Datacron, which is very nice. You can then go Beskar, Mando, Chewie and Han. So really, you can split CLS into a decent amount of teams here. Ideally, you're going to keep Han and Chewie together, and ideally, you're going to keep these two together. I have also seen some people run BB-8 before instead of 3PO, but I don't know why you would do that instead of this, because you'll see later BB-8 is a staple in another team. But this is what I'll do with your CLS. So then we've got a very good team, which is a Separatist team. Now there are more Separatist teams, I didn't list them all, but the most common is Newt, Django, and B1. Other teams are Poggle with droids like Droidica. You can also run GBA, but honestly GBA isn't the best in threes. I prefer to use him as like a cleanup or a support unit. Like say you want to take in like a solo character, bring GBA for the tank to get higher banners. Honestly, I think the best way forward is to go one Newt team, one Poggle team, and then maybe a Dooku team as well. And then Geo's kind of go on the sideline. Again, Grievous just isn't the best in threes. I wouldn't really set him. So that's why B1 comes out of that team. And then you can use Grievous with low gig droids, or you can use Grievous with B2 and Magna Guard, and that also works as well. Next up, we have Darth Revan. Now again, I've kind of split this into 3 or 4 teams here, because Darth Revan is another character like CLS that a lot of you are going to have. And a lot of you are probably going to be wondering, how on earth do you split this up? What do you do? Where should you use them? Questions like that. So in the case of Darth Revan, the most traditional that you're going to see is Darth Revan, Malik, Bastila. But in 3v3, Malik is a god of solos. For this reason, or should I say the Lord of Solos? That probably sounds a bit better. But for this reason, you're not going to really want to run the trio, right? Because it's so expensive. In 3v3, unless you're an endgame roster, you're probably using your Malik to beat Padme, you're probably using your Malik to beat other teams, or you'll see there's another team where he kind of slots in and makes them better. So one example is you can run this trio. Then if you kind of want to save Bastila and you're like, well, I don't mind dropping Malik, but I don't want to drop Bastila as well because she can be used in other teams. Some people actually run Talon, and they do Darth Revan, Malik, and Talon. And the thing is, if Talon stealths and you don't get her out of stealth, you have to hit Darth Revan. If Darth Revan dies, he revives, and then all of a sudden, Talon goes crazy, and she will go crazy in this team. So this is another team you could possibly run. Then the third lineup, which I've listed here, there are more guys, and we're going to cover some more at the end, is the Malgus lineup. And I think the best Malgus lineup in threes is this one. I honestly wouldn't really run Malik in here, and I wouldn't set Malgus with Rubbish Sith unless it's like a backwall team, because then it can be beaten by real off-meta counters. Obviously, if you have high relics, you have Omicrons, it will be a bit harder for them, but I would still set this team here. Moving on, we have a Maul team, and this is where we could have used Bastila, for example. So the best thing about Maul in threes is his lead is actually pretty good. You do need a Zeta, but what it's going to be doing is you're going to be gaining stealth. Now let's have a look at what Maul's lead is doing here. All Sith allies gain 20% evasion, again 20% turn meter, and stealth for 1 turn at the start of each encounter, and whenever they evade or are critically hit. Can't be critically hit while stealth. They also gain advantage and all of that stuff. When they're stealth, they ignore taunt. Now, why is this team good? Because what you want to do with this team is you want to set Maul, you want to set one other Sith. Sidious is quite good. You can also set Dooku, you can also set someone else like Bastler. And then you want to set someone who's going to tank. Now, there's kind of 3 or 4 options here, so we'll have a look. So the first one you can use is Savage, because he's going to basically taunt, right? And he's going to be constantly hit, and you know he's going to be counterattacking, he's going to be doing all that fun stuff, he's going to be gaining all the bonuses. So he's option number 1. I think he's the best one, but if you don't want to run him, you can actually run this, and you can use Nest. Because it basically works the same way. Nest will basically be a force taunt, and if you crit either of these two, they stealth and you're back on Nest. And it's a very, very easy team to time out on. But Savage is obviously the best. But if you don't want to run him, Nest. And if you don't want to run Nest, you can put honestly any tank in. You could even put L3, although L3 wouldn't be as good. They would still work. But you really want to be running this trio here if you're going to try this one. Again, it also works at lower gears. You know, you don't need relics. Relics help. But, you know, if you're Chromium or below, or even a Rhodium and below, and this could easily be a backwall team at low gear. Most people will probably have more Insidious done anyway because of the C farm. So maybe you'll have Savage done, maybe he's gear 12. I would still set this. I think it's a very good team. Moving on, we have the Resistance faction, and I've actually split this up into a couple of teams here. But there are more, again. It's like a common trend here, there's always more that we can set. So the first is a staple, is one that we all know about, and it's Finn, Resistance Hero Finn, Resistance Hero Poe. Now this can be beaten. It's got about a 14% hold rate last Grand Arena 3v3. But it's a very good team to set. And we do also have Datacrons. We have a Datacron for Poe and we have a Datacron for Finn. Now Finn's one isn't really the best, but it's useful. It gives him foresight. If you have someone like Rose Tico's Omicron was Datacron, maybe that can slot in here. But this is probably the best team you're going to be running here to begin with. Unless you have Zori, at least Gear 11 double Zated. The Omicron's not needed, but the Omicron makes it so much better. And then I'd actually run this instead, and I'll drop a Poe, because this would be much, much better, right? Then you free up JTR. So you're going to be running JTR, BB-8, R2-D2. This is a very, very staple team. This beats CLS teams. This beats other teams as well. This is just a staple team a lot of us need to be running. If you farmed JML, or if you farmed Ray, the chances are you have her team up and running. And this is why you didn't want to use BB-8 earlier, because BB-8 can be used in this team. And honestly, it's just very, very nice. You have lots of stuns, you have lots of exposes, you have the turn meter manipulation and control from Ray. She's also quite tanky, and she has health regen and protection regen when she avoids. So through using R2-D2 stealth, you can really make sure that the battles go in your favor. This is a good offense or defense team. Next up, we actually have a team with no lead. I've spoken about this in a recent video. Some of you knew it was coming. And it is Nest, IG, Quill. There is no lead here. The synergy is with these two, and then Nest just being a nuisance. Honestly, it's more of a timeout team, more of a backwall team. It can work, especially at high relics. You see this quite a lot in high areas of Kaiba. But it's a decent team. I'm not saying it's the best team ever, but in 3v3 in Kaiba you need 15 teams, and in the lower tiers you need like 10 plus. You need a lot of teams. This may be one you set. Next up we have Qui-Gon. Now Qui-Gon, as we all know, is a decent team. He's a good 3v3 team because you basically just need 3 characters. Qui-Gon, Anakin, Ki-Adi-Mundi. The only thing is, in defense this is good, but it can be countered because it's a tank. In 5v5, obviously it would be different because you have Mace in there who would kind of take away some of the damage. But this is also a good offense team. You can beat some very good teams with this. I would recommend this team to almost anyone. Next up, we have a staple, one we all knew was coming, and that is General Skywalker. General Skywalker is a very good 3v3 team, offense or defense. On offense, this can beat Malik and Malgus and Darth Revan and all of those fun teams. And on defense, it's just going to take a decent team to beat. It can be Wampa soloed, but high relics will kind of prevent that. You also need to go up against an opponent with a very good Wampa to do so, or you would have to have very, very bad mods, because otherwise Rex will just Rex-late Wampa. Then we have Palpatine Starkiller. This is a good team, offense and defense. Honestly, the only issue is it can be beaten on defense by Wampa. It's a pretty easy solo, unless Wampa gets lapped. The chance, I think it has to be quite a big difference in speed, maybe like 150 difference. Most of the time, you're not going to be getting lapped. And if that doesn't happen, it's not too bad. But if you want to take this to the next level, and I wouldn't really recommend it because it's too big an investment, you would actually do something like this. And if you do this sort of team, you can actually end up getting rid of the Wampa counter, but then it opens up other counters to you. And something like this is actually quite nice. So you can actually run Treya lead, and then you can bring Barris. Where is Barris? Barris is here. And you can run this team. Barris will then be giving turn meter whenever there's critical hits. Treya will also isolate Wampa. Once Wampa's isolated, that's basically GG. There's no chance. So you can run something like this if you know your opponent only has Wampa to beat Starkiller. You can run something like that with good success. Honestly, you can run Starkiller with almost anyone in freeze because you only need to meet two of the requirements. You either have to have a Sith, an Unaligned Force Dark user, Unaligned Force Light Side user, and a Jedi. And if you have two of them met, you're going to get the Omicron activated. This is the most traditional, but honestly, sometimes it's worth switching these things up. You can also run Savage lead. You can either run Malgus lead. That's something I did last time out. So there's lots of options. The only thing is, the second you bring Malgus in here, your opponent's likely going to use Treya Omicron, and it's going to take out a big investment in teams. So it's just something to think about, but again, it's always important to change, adapt, and try new things, because if you're predictable, your opponent will know exactly what you're going to set, and they will plan exactly what they need to use, and you're probably going to lose, as long as your opponent can execute their plan. Next up, we have a team that I don't actually have, but it's a team I wish I had. And it's actually Maul, Bo-Katan, and Canderous. This team is very nice. This is made better because of the Datacron that was on Canderous, but this is still a nice team. Alternatively, you can run Maul, Canderous, Django. And we've kind of covered this in a recent stream. This can actually beat JMK on offense. You would need to mod Django to be the healthiest. But honestly, this is still a nice team for defense. Maul is interesting. I wouldn't set him with Lord Vader in freeze. In 5v5, I'm 100% for setting Maul with Lord Vader. But in threes, I think he's more useful as a separate team. As I've already established, you need 15 teams on defense, and then you need roughly 15 teams on offense if you're not failing anything. So for this reason, I think Maul being his own team is really beneficial. Next up, we have Grand Inquisitor. Now, this team is something I know a lot of people were struggling with last 3v3, and it's Grand Inquisitor, 9th Sister, 7th Sister. Honestly, if you've done the Grand Inquisitor farm, you're going to have these at Relic 5, and if you're doing Rise of Empire, you're going to have these at Relic 7, and this is just a nasty team to go through. It can work on defense, it can work on offense, it's just a decent team. There are counters, obviously, like with everything, but if you've got the Zetas, you've got decent mods, this is just going to cause issues. Maybe a good front wall team. And then we have Bounty Hunters. Now again, I've kind of broken these down into two lineups. I've only gone for the boss Bounty Hunters. Unfortunately, if you wanted to see every possible team in existence that we could use in 3v3, the video would be like 10 hours long. We don't have that much time. But I've given you guys a good breakdown of some teams we can use. In the case of Bosk, I kind of have two teams I recommend. The first is Bosk Boba Dengar. The second is Bosk Zam Dengar. Honestly, you can also sub Dengar out for Zam in the top one, and this is just going to cause issues. Dengar's going to stealth, then no one else can stealth in the other team. Bosk is just quite fixed, Zam gives you the speed, so Bosk will most likely be taunting. It's just a nice team, it's not too hard to beat, but it can work where needed. Then we have the Profundity teams, or shall we say the Radis teams. The reason I say Profundity teams is because if you have Profundity, you have this team. There's two lineups that work. Now this one here was seen about 40,000 times last Grand Arena, and it held about 19% of the time. This one held 0.5% more of the time, but it was only seen like 15,000 times. So this team is better here, but what it is Radis, Jin, Cassian, or Radis, Jin, Scarif. Scarif works better because obviously it's nice to have a tank in there and he can revive. But Cassian can work as well, and I would rather use this one on offense and this one on defense. But a decent team nonetheless. Omicrons are kind of necessary, same with Zetas. Then we have Tuskens. I couldn't do 3v3 and not include Tuskens. So we have the Tusken Raider Omicron team, which is this one here. Now to make this efficient, you're going to want to have decent relics on Tusken Raider. The rest are irrelevant. This guy's just going to be perma-taunting. In terms of modding Aurora, if you make him super fast, he will just give everyone turn meter. You can also slap on the Datacron from the last set, which gives turn meter, and then you can just make him the weakest, which is what I've done. He will take basically a bonus turn, more or less, at the start of the battle. He then gives everyone turn meter, the train begins. It's a very nice team to have. This one down here, however, is brand new. I don't have it up and running, but some of you might. If you've applied the Omicron to Chieftain, and if you took Tusken Warrior to Gear 11 and Zated them, I would say go ahead and run this. See what it's like. I think this might be a good team. Then we have the Galactic Legends. Okay, this bit is a little bit more complicated because I only put one team for each, but there are so many different variations, so we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do. So the first one we have is Rey, Ben, Hermit Yoda. This team is literally the best team in 3v3 right now. There is an argument, Armorer works very well as well. The only problem is if you go Armorer, the chances are you're not gonna hold more than once, right? Because as soon as Armor is gone, it's so much easier. Hermit Yoda's better because Hermit Yoda's going to stealth, then you have to deal with these two. And they're going to be equalizing health and doing all that fun stuff. So this is probably the best lineup. You can also run L3, especially with the Datacron. You can also run other characters as well. You could run Holdo. There's some other things you can do, but this is the main team you're going to run. Now, say you don't have Rey, and say you still have Ben, run Ben with JTR, or run Ben with Scavenger Rey. In fact, you could run Scavenger Rey, Ben solo, and you could literally duo any team that's low gear, low anything, because they're going to have the whole mechanics of whenever Rey's in the lead, Ben can't die and Rey can't die. Next up, we have a JML team. Now, JML, he's decent on 3v3 unless your opponent knows the ways around this, and this is a team that people traditionally will run. It's Bastila lead, JML, Wat Tambor, and what's going to happen is JML gains a load of protection, Wat Tambor just forces the taunt with the tank tech. It's a decent team. It has its counters, but this can definitely work. I wouldn't use it every Grand Arena, but if you have JML and you have Bastila up and running, I would use this. Honestly, I think it's very good. The only issue is it's an easy two-shot, because all your opponent has to do is send in like CLS, take out Wat Tambor, and then they just have to take out this, or CLS just one-shots. But it's still a good team regardless. Next up, we actually have Lord Vader. Now, again, there's only one team here, but there are other variations you can use. So what I'd recommend is Lord Vader, Royal Guard, Ninth Sister. If you don't have Ninth Sister like me, and I don't, you can use Maul, but like I said, Maul is good with Mandalorians. You can also use Crew, and Crew is actually very good in this lineup because he's going to gain speed up, he can stun, he's got all the buffs and all the bonuses. He's very nice in here. You can also run Second Sister, Seventh Sister, basically any Inquisitor. I think the best is Ninth or Crew, if I'm completely honest with you guys. It's always nice to have an unlocked Force user, otherwise it does mean your opponent can start using Rey as a counter. I don't know why you'd ever do that, but the second you don't have a Dark Side unlocked Force user, your opponent can start winning with Rey. Next up we have Jabba. Again, I don't have him, but if you do, this is the team to run. You just want to run this one at the top. Then we have Sith Eternal, and this is where I was saying Malik may have other uses, same as Savage. If you have C, and you want to set him on defense, I know a lot of you are going to be saying, but Glurmit, C's trash. And yeah, C's not the best defensive GL, he's probably the worst of all of them. But this trio here is a good trio and will take a Galactic Legend to be. Wampa's not going to be beating this, and other teams are also going to be struggling. This is a decent team. This can work very, very well. And then the last team is obviously JMK Cat. With JMK Cat, you can remove Commander Ahsoka, you can put her with Dash and Vandor, and that will actually beat JMK Cat on the other side, which is absolutely mental to me. If you do that, make sure your GK is literally 0 speed. The reason being, if he's not, Gas will beat this. If GK is 0 speed, General Skywalker gets stuck behind that tool. That's basically all it comes down to. This can work very well. So hopefully this has given you some teams. Like I said, it's not every team that's for 3v3. It's just a short 20-minute video to hopefully show you guys what you can set on defense, what you can possibly use on offense, and how to kind of approach the building teams and setting teams in 3v3. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope you will have a glowing day.